A Florida-based multi-agency task force has seized a record 1 million pounds of cocaine during fiscal year 2025. A haul of officials says represents 378 million lethal doses, enough to kill every American. The seizure was announced by the Joint Interagency Task Force South, led by U.S. Southern Command. The unit, which includes the U.S. Coast Guard, works with partner nations to disrupt the flow of illicit drugs through the transit zone between South America, Central America, and the Caribbean, and to weaken transnational criminal organizations. According to the task force, the amount of drugs seized over the past 12 months is enough to fill 42 dump trucks. The 2025 fiscal year ends on September 30th. JIATF-S operates across 42 million square miles from the eastern Pacific to the western Atlantic, stretching from international waters north of the Caribbean Antilles to the southern tip of South America at Cape Horn. The region has long been a major trafficking corridor for drugs, arms, cash, and people. Well-financed and sophisticated criminal networks continue to exploit the area, officials said. By disrupting the flow of these deadly drugs, JIATF-S is saving lives and protecting our homeland, the agency added. A seizure of this magnitude has never been accomplished before. Officials said the 1 million pounds of cocaine does not include the strikes on Venezuelan narco-terrorists. The Trump administration has vowed to intensify military action in the Caribbean as part of its counter-narcotics strategy.
Well, first of all, let me say that from an operational standpoint, I'll leave it to the Pentagon to identify munitions, units, and things of that nature. Let me say this. The United States has long, for many, many years, established intelligence that allow us to interdict and stop drug boats. And we did that. And it doesn't work. Interdiction doesn't work because these drug cartels, what they do is they know they're going to lose, 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. What will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. So they were designated as what they are narco-terrorist organizations. So the same information and the same intelligence mechanisms with maybe a higher focus was used to determine that a drug boat was headed towards eventually the United States. And instead of interdicting it on the president's orders, he blew it up. And it'll happen again. Maybe it's happening right now, I don't know. But the point is, the President of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations. This one was operating in international waters, headed towards the United States to flood our country with poison, and under President Trump, those days are over. La pregunta fue sobre la operación ayer. Part of this working group, part of our security plan, part of our implementation is to stop the flow of armaments. We have the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms involved. We have the FBI involved. And it's not just Mexico, by the way. Those arms are flowing to Haiti, they're flowing to Jamaica, they're flowing to Trinidad, they're flowing into the Caribbean, and we're going to put a stop to it. So that is part of our implementation plan, and it's going to require cooperation because they're going to seize armaments, and they're going to tell us these are the armaments we seized, and we think it came from here, and we'll be able to trace back the networks. It's going to take some investigative work. Or we're going to be able to seize armaments and prevent them from coming because we know these networks and we're going to disrupt them. So that is part of our agreement and part of what we're working on. And by the way, we think it adds to our own security. I would make one more point, and that is the unconventional weapons that some of these cartels are now coming into possession of. We are increasingly concerned that these cartels are now in possession not just of landmines and grenade. We're now seeing the deployment of drone technology by narco-terrorist groups operating out of Venezuelan territory in many cases into Colombia. Imagine drones in the hands of these narco cartels threatening nation states, threatening security forces. So that the President of the United States has determined that narco-terrorist organizations pose a threat to the national security of the United States. I don't need to explain to you why. They are traffickers of people, they are traffickers of deadly drugs, they are traffickers of all kinds of illicit means, and they use the money that they generate to destabilize governments in the region, which in and of itself then poses a threat to the United States. So he has designated for what they are narco-terrorist organizations. These are not stockbrokers, these are not real estate agents who on the side deal a few drugs. These are organized, corporate structured organizations who specialize in the trafficking of deadly drugs into the United States of America. They pose an immediate threat to the United States, period. If you're on a boat full of cocaine or fentanyl or whatever headed to the United States, you're an immediate threat to the United States. And the President, under his authority as Commander-in-Chief, has a right, under exigent circumstances, to eliminate imminent threats to the United States, and that's what he did yesterday in international waters, and that's what he intends to do. We're not going to sit back anymore and watch these people sail up and down the Caribbean like a cruise ship. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen anymore. They're not going to bring drugs into the United States. We're going to stop them. I know a lot of presidents have talked about doing it. This president is not a talker. He's a doer, and he's going to do it. As far as your question about tariffs, that's not, I don't negotiate those agreements. I will certainly go back and report. I think they're aware of the level of cooperation that exists with regards to security. We've made a tremendous progress. And, obviously I know that even as I speak to you today, the economic team from Mexico is in Washington meeting with Ambassador Greer and also meeting with Commerce Secretary Lutnick. And obviously, that we hope that will come to some positive result at some point here soon, because our economic relations are very important. We have a lot to build on with the successes of USMCA. Cooperated. There's always been law enforcement cooperation. We're talking about amplifying that. We already have started to do it. Just as a great example, let's say there's a gun running group that's coming out of the United States, headed into Mexico. We identify it. We don't get there in time to stop it. We pass that on to the Mexican authorities, who can act on it. Likewise, they can identify a drug shipment that's headed our way. Maybe it got past their systems, but now is in the United States, and we can act on it. Anytime you take people in the jail, they become informants. They give you information about the operations of cartels and drug organizations. Sharing that information is also valuable. There's opportunities to cooperate on equipment. Maybe there's equipment we have in the United States. Maybe it's equipment that we have used in the past in other areas of the world, and they have an interest in purchasing it or have an interest in acquiring it, and we can provide that to them. Or vice versa. Maybe they have something that we would want. It also has to do with joint training. Maybe there's things they do operationally that they have learned from their time taking on the cartels that would serve us on our side of the border. Or vice versa, things that we have learned from a training standpoint that they would benefit from. That's the kind of cooperation we're going to amplify on and operate together on. And I think it's very valuable. That's always existed at a certain level. What we're talking about now is formalizing it, systemizing it, making it a regular, ongoing feature of a broader cooperation on an issue of mutual concern.
Sense of what the U.S. policy or what you're trying to achieve with the aircraft carriers, or the boats, I should say, in near Venezuela, and also the boat that you mentioned yesterday where 11 people were killed. What was found on that boat, and why were the men killed instead of taken into
On the boat, you had massive amounts of drugs. We have tapes of them speaking. It was massive amounts of drugs coming into our country to kill a lot of people. And everybody fully understands that. In fact, you see it. You see the bags of drugs all over the boat. And they were hit. Obviously, they won't be doing it again. And I think a lot of other people won't be doing it again when they watch that tape. They're going to say, let's not do this. We have to protect our country, and we're going to. Venezuela's been a very bad actor. They've been, as you know, they've been sending millions of people into our country, many of them Tren de Aragua, some of the worst gangs, some of the worst people anywhere in the world in terms of gangs. And we had some in Washington, D.C. We took care of them very quickly, but they're out of here. They've gone. But Venezuela's been very bad, both in terms of drugs and sending some of the worst criminals anywhere in the world into our country. They emptied out, you don't know this, but they emptied out their prisons in Venezuela, and they emptied them out into the United States of America. And that's part of the problem we have. We're getting them out. We're getting them out rapidly, but it's caused a tremendous problem. And Pete and all of the people that are working very hard to rectify the stupidity of the Biden administration, allowing these people to pour into our country with open borders. We are paying a big price as a country for the incompetence of the Biden administration. But think of it, opened up prisons, drug dealers, drug lords, everything coming out of Venezuela. They said, and we said, we're not going to put up with it anymore. So Venezuela has been one of the worst actors in the whole group, and we have a group of pretty bad actors.